Mid-September 1944, Western Europe. The kind of moment generals wait their entire careers for. The front looks settled. The enemy looks stretched. And for the first time in months, victory doesn't feel like hope. It feels scheduled. Inside a German command post near the frontier, a general studies his map without drama. No speeches, no clenched fists. He is not a fanatic. He is not reckless. He is a professional who survived Russia and North Africa and learned a simple rule: wars are not won by belief, but by calculation. And today the numbers finally make sense. Under his command sits Panzer Brigade 113. Not exhausted remnants held together by luck and prayer, but a fresh unit delivered straight from the factories. 58 Panther tanks, brand new, paint still clean. Engines barely broken in. Some crews are so new they're still learning the rhythm of the turret. Dangerous machines driven by men who haven't yet learned how quickly danger bites back. On paper, it's perfection. The Panther is the most lethal tank on the Western Front. Its gun can kill at distances American tanks can barely respond to. Its armor turns incoming rounds aside like irritation. Against it, the American Sherman looks reliable, hardworking, and hopelessly ordinary. Across the lines, the Americans are everywhere and nowhere. Their units are spread thin across hundreds of kilometers. Fuel is rationed. Supply convoys crawl forward like exposed veins. This is what happens when momentum outruns logistics. Speed becomes a gamble, and leading that gamble is George Patton, a brilliant commander, aggressive, relentless, famous for moving faster than his supplies can follow. The kind of man who wins wars by pushing harder than anyone thinks is reasonable, and sometimes by pushing too far. To the German general, Patton's army looks less like a spear and more like a stretched wire pulled tight and ready to snap. All it needs is one clean order, one concentrated blow, 2 days of fuel, 48 hours of violence. That is the illusion settling over the map. The sense that history has already made up its mind. That this time the superior machine will finally meet the perfect moment. And when machines meet moments, they don't hesitate. They move. The plan looks clean, almost elegant. The kind of plan that survives long nights on a map table without a single line needing to be erased. The objective is simple: strike the American right flank. Not the center, not the strongest point. The soft edge. The exposed hinge holding the entire advance together. If that hinge breaks, the spearhead collapses. Units are cut off. Momentum dies. A crisis spreads faster than any tank column ever could. The German staff doesn't talk about bravery. They talk about geometry. They know the Americans are moving faster than their fuel trucks can follow. Roads are clogged. Supply lines stretch hundreds of kilometers back. Tanks idle, while drivers wait for gasoline like patients waiting for blood. This is not weakness, they tell themselves. This is opportunity. The Panthers will concentrate. 58 of them. One fist, no dispersal, no hesitation. They will punch through the American 4th Armored Division, split it, and roll into the rear areas before the enemy understands what is happening. By the time reports reach headquarters, the damage will already be irreversible. Every assumption supports the plan. The battle will be fought at range. That is how armored warfare is decided. Distance favors armor thickness and gun velocity, and in both categories the Panther reigns supreme. At 2,000 meters, it kills calmly, methodically, almost politely. The Americans in their Shermans will see the flash long before they feel the impact. The numbers confirm it. Armor angles, penetration tables, engagement distances. The math does not lie. Then comes the fuel calculation. 600,000 liters allocated to the brigade. Enough for 48 hours of high-intensity operations. 2 days. That is all that is required. 2 days to fracture the American advance and force even George Patton to stop, regroup, and rethink. It is not a gamble, the staff insists. It is a controlled operation with a clear beginning and a clear end. And plans like this are dangerous, not because they are reckless, but because they make too much sense. They fit the doctrine. They obey every rule written before the war began, which is exactly why everyone in the room believes they cannot fail. There is a quiet moment before the first engines move when the plan feels complete. On the map, everything aligns. Arrows meet where they are supposed to. Distances behave. Time obeys. This is how the German commander understands war. Steel versus steel. Armor against armor. The thicker plate wins. The longer gun decides. It is a logic forged in 1940, refined in Russia, proven in North Africa. And for years it worked. What it does not account for is what cannot be drawn with a ruler. Weather, for example. It is treated as background noise, not as a weapon. Forecasts are read, noted, and politely ignored. After all, fog does not stop a Panther shell. Rain does not soften armor. The tanks will advance regardless. Communication is another assumption. Radios exist. Crews are trained. Orders will flow forward, reports will flow back. Coordination is expected because coordination has always been there. No one asks what happens when the air itself refuses to cooperate. Speed is dismissed almost casually. Panthers are not slow, the staff reminds itself. They are fast enough. Faster than infantry. Faster than most enemies. What matters is not movement, but position. Get to the right place at the right distance and let the gun do the rest. It is all very reasonable. But reason in 1944 has new enemies. American doctrine no longer treats tanks as lone duelists. It treats them as nodes in a network. Eyes, ears, radios, artillery, and logistics move together or not at all. Speed is not about how fast a vehicle can drive forward, but how quickly a force can react sideways. None of this appears on the German map. The commander is not incompetent. He is not blind. He is simply solving the wrong problem with the correct answer to an older one. He brings the logic of 19 onto a battlefield that has quietly moved on. And the danger of that mistake is not immediate. Nothing explodes yet. No tanks burn. No radios scream. The plan still looks perfect, which is exactly how tragedies usually begin. At Euro 7:30, the engines finally move. Steel columns roll forward into what should have been a textbook armored advance. Instead, they drive straight into fog so thick it feels solid. Not mist, not haze, a wall. Visibility collapses from hundreds of meters to 50, then 30, then less than the length of the tank itself. Periscopes show nothing but gray. Drivers lose sight of the vehicle ahead. Commanders lean out of hatches squinting like men trying to read through milk. The Panthers keep moving because stopping feels worse than blindness. And just like that, the Panthers' greatest advantage disappears. A 2,000-meter kill shot requires sight. Precision optics are useless if there is nothing to see. Range tables don't help when the enemy is somewhere inside the fog, laughing quietly. The formation tightens. Tanks close up instinctively. Tracks clanking, engines roaring louder than necessary. Radios crackle with short, sharp questions. Where are you? Hold alignment. Stay on axis. No one answers clearly. Sound travels. Vision does not. Then the lead Panther erupts. No warning shot. No muzzle flash. One moment it's there, the next, its burning turret blown open like a tin can. The second tank slews sideways, trying to identify a threat that doesn't exist in any visible direction. Then it explodes too. Panic arrives faster than orders ever could. Commanders shout into radios. Crews traverse turrets left and right, firing blind, into fog that swallows every tracer. The air fills with noise, not information. Someone reports enemy to the left. Someone else swears it's the right. Both are wrong and neither knows it. The Panthers were built to dominate at distance, to see first and kill calmly. Now they are forced into a fight measured in seconds and meters. Their guns swing too slowly. Their weight works against them. Every turn feels like moving underwater. This was supposed to be a hammer blow. Instead, it feels like walking into a dark room full of furniture you didn't know was there. The fog does not favor either side, but it punishes one side far more than the other. And as the smoke thickens and radios descend into chaos, one truth becomes unavoidable. The most powerful tank on the battlefield is blind, and blind machines don't stay powerful for long. The Germans never planned for this vehicle, because in their minds it barely counted. When the first reports mentioned fast-moving American armor, the assumption is automatic, light tanks, recon elements, something fragile, something loud, something that will scatter once real steel arrives. The word Hellcat does not register as a threat. It sounds more like a nickname than a weapon. And on paper, the assumption makes sense. The M18 Hellcat has almost no armor. A heavy machine gun can punch through its turret. The top is open, exposing the crew to shrapnel grenades and weather. By German standards, which worship protection and survivability, this thing borders on irresponsible. A Panther commander would call it a suicide box and move on. What the paper does not show is speed. The Hellcat weighs barely 17 tons and is powered by an aircraft radial engine pushing 350 horsepower. The same kind of engine that pulls fighters off runways now drags steel across muddy French roads. On pavement, it can reach 55 miles per hour. Off-road, it still moves faster than anything wearing German crosses. In the fog, speed is not a luxury, it is a weapon. Hellcat crews do not advance in formation. They hunt. Radios crackle with short bursts. Bearings, sounds, engine noise moving east. A platoon breaks off engines screaming, racing down narrow roads, and farm tracks invisible on German maps. They do not look for duel, they look for angles. They arrive quietly. Engines drop to idle. Guns already loaded. They wait. A Panther rolls past, massive, blind, focused forward. Its thick frontal armor is flawless, useless, untouchable. Its sides are not. 3 high-velocity rounds slam into the flank. Steel folds. Fire blooms inside the turret. Before the Panther's gun can even begin to rotate, the Hellcat is gone. Reverse gear. Full throttle. 200 meters back. Then 300 sideways. Then another position entirely. The Panther fires into fog where the enemy used to be. This happens again, and again, and again. The Germans think they've hit a wall of American heavy tanks. What they've actually walked into is a swarm. Autonomous hunters linked by radio, not proximity. A pack that doesn't hold ground because it doesn't need to. A force designed around one brutal idea: never be where the return shot is aimed. This is not an accident. It is philosophy. The Germans build armored fortresses, heavy, protected, designed to survive the hit. The Americans build vehicles that assume the hit is unacceptable. Light, fast, replaceable. Designed to shoot first move immediately and repeat until the enemy runs out of options. In the fog, that philosophy becomes decisive. The Panthers lumber forward, turrets swinging too slowly, crews shouting into radios that no longer describe reality. The Hellcats dart, strike, vanish. It is not elegant. It is not heroic. It is efficient. And for the first time that morning, the German commanders understand something deeply unsettling. They are not losing to a better tank. They are losing to a better idea. The fog does not last forever. By late morning, it begins to thin, lifting just enough to reveal something the German commanders did not plan for. Above the battlefield, small shapes appear in the sky. Not fighters, not bombers. Slow, fragile-looking aircraft, drifting almost lazily. Piper Cubs. They look harmless, like flying toys. The kind of planes no one bothers to shoot at because surely they cannot matter. They matter. From the cockpit, American observers suddenly have what the Panthers lost hours ago: vision. They see columns, stalled formations, tangled tanks, bunched together like animals pressed into a corner. They speak calmly into radios, reading off coordinates as if calling out grid squares on a chessboard. Miles away, the American artillery is already waiting. This is not traditional fire. There are no ranging shots, no warning shells, no polite invitation to take cover. Instead, there is mathematics. A fire direction center calculates backwards from a single moment in time. Different batteries, different distances, different elevations. Each gun fires at a different second. All shells arrive together. That moment is called time on target. To the soldiers on the ground, it feels like the sky simply breaks. 1 second, the battlefield is noisy but survivable. The next, the air itself explodes. Dozens of shells detonate simultaneously, bursting above the ground at lethal height. Shrapnel falls like steel rain. There is no time to react. No time to run. No time to understand. German panzer grenadiers riding on the tanks are hit first. The blast does not care how brave they are. It does not care how experienced. In seconds, the infantry screen is gone. The Panthers remain physically intact. Their armor shrugs off the fragments. But something far more important is destroyed. Radios are smashed. Antennas are torn away. External optics shatter. Commanders slam hatches shut as explosions walk across the formation. The tanks are now sealed, blind, deaf. A tank without infantry is vulnerable. A tank without vision is helpless. And a tank without communication is alone. Inside steel hulls, crews hear impacts but cannot tell from where. Orders no longer arrive. Reports no longer leave. Each vehicle exists in its own private war, disconnected from the others. This is no longer a battle between units. It is a system processing targets. The artillery does not chase tanks. It does not argue with them. It removes the conditions that allow tanks to fight at all. The Hellcats return to work. The Panthers cannot see them coming. What remains on the field is not resistance but inertia. The German attack does not collapse with a dramatic moment. It simply stops functioning. And that is the most brutal kind of defeat. By the second day, the battlefield looks strangely quiet. Not peaceful. Just stalled. Burning Panthers still mark the roads, but more telling are the ones that aren't burning at all. Tanks sitting intact in ditches. Engines cold. Crews gone. Perfect machines abandoned without a fight. The reason is not firepower. It is fuel. German units begin reporting the same problem again and again. Low fuel, no fuel. Vehicles immobilized. Orders come down to hold position, then to pull back, then finally to do the unthinkable. Destroy the gun, disable the engine, walk away. A Panther without fuel is not a weapon. It is an obstacle. There are no recovery vehicles coming, no mobile repair depots following behind. If a track breaks, the tank stays. If the transmission fails, it stays. If the engine overheats, it stays. German doctrine never planned for large-scale recovery under fire. The assumption was simple: superior machines would not need constant rescue. Reality disagrees. Across the lines, the Americans treat damage very differently. A Sherman with a blown track is not dead. It is delayed. Recovery crews move forward while the fight is still happening. Steel cables snap tight. Tanks are dragged backward under smoke and dust. Mechanics work in open fields, welding plates, replacing parts, swearing loudly and efficiently. By evening, tanks knocked out in the morning are back in line. This is not bravery. It is infrastructure. American losses are counted, logged, and replaced. Fuel trucks arrive. Ammunition trucks arrive. Spare engines arrive. The battlefield is connected by roads and rails and ships to factories thousands of miles away. What breaks can be rebuilt. What burns can be replaced. The German Panthers, for all their perfection, have no such safety net. Their factories are far away. Their fuel is scarce. Their supply lines are brittle. When something goes wrong, there is no second act. By the end of the week, the numbers tell the story with brutal clarity. 58 Panthers entered the battle. Only a handful remain operational, not destroyed in heroic last stands, simply removed one by shortages. The American units, meanwhile, report something almost absurd. Their operational strength is higher than when the fighting began. This is where the battle truly ends. Not with a final charge, not with a decisive explosion, but with a realization. One side is fighting with machines. The other is fighting with a system. The Panther was built to win duels. The Americans built a war that never had to duel at all. And in modern war, that difference is fatal. When the counting finally stops, the number feels unreal. 58 Panthers went into the battle. By the end of the week, 8 remain operational. Not 8 heroes holding the line. Just 8 machines that still start when the engine turns over. This was not a collapse of courage. The German crews did not suddenly lose their will. They fought when they could see, when they could move, when they could communicate. They did not fail as soldiers. They were simply overtaken by something larger than themselves. Speed beat armor. Communication beat firepower. Industry beat engineering. The Panther was magnificent at what it was designed to do. In a duel at range with clear sight and stable supply, it was terrifying. But modern war had quietly changed the rules. Battles were no longer decided by the best weapon at the front. They were decided by how fast information moved, how quickly losses were replaced, and how smoothly power flowed from factory to battlefield. That is why this fight matters, not because it was large, not because it was famous, but because it revealed the truth without drama. The Germans built warrior machines. The Americans built a machine for making war. One side depended on perfection. The other depended on replacement. One side needed every tank to survive. The other assumed tanks would be lost and planned accordingly. And that assumption changed everything. When a Sherman burned, another arrived. When a radio failed, another frequency answered. When fuel ran low, trucks kept coming. The battlefield was not an edge. It was a node in a system stretching across oceans, rails, ports, refineries, and assembly lines. That system did not panic. It did not hesitate. It did not argue. It simply kept working. This is the uncomfortable lesson of the battle. Heroism still mattered. Skill still mattered. But they no longer decided outcomes on their own. The age of individual superiority was ending. The age of systems had arrived. In the fog of September 1944, it was not a general who won. It was not a tank. It was not even an army. The factory won.